How many pages is an animated script?
Well, it depends, because there are animated scripts come in various lengths, depending on whether they're a feature, whether they're half an hour, which is normal in a television show, or with little kids, it's very often, or even not so little kids, they very often package two episodes, two stories within one 30-minute episode. So 11, starting with the beginning, 11-minute smallest is 11-minute script is usually 15 to 16 pages. A 22-minute script is usually in the high 20s, 28, 29, maybe 30 pages. And then a feature-length script. Animated features tend to be shorter for some reason than live-action scripts. For one reason, they're enormously expensive. Animation is hugely expensive. So if you don't need to go, 2 hours, if an hour and a half tells a story, we're not going to spend the extra money. It's much cheaper to shoot 2 hours of live action footage than it is to do 2 hours of animation. So an animated feature script will often be 60 pages, maybe 80.
How does writing animation differ from live action?
Fundamentally, the fundamentals of story structure are the same. And the difference is, the primary difference is, we're talking about dialogue. Dialogue is nowhere near as important in animation as it is in live action. You want to use as little as possible, as little dialogue as possible. As someone explained to me when I was first starting out, there's nothing more boring than watching mouth flap in animation, watching two characters do this. That's not interesting. Even a great animator, even a great artist, can only make an animated character's face do so many things. They're more limited than an actual human face, even someone who's not an actor. If you look at just an average person's face, watch them in a restaurant or something, they're going to make all kinds of subtle movements within their face, their eyebrows, their lips, and so on, that animation simply cannot capture. And so you don't want to hinge your animated story on the faces of the characters. You want it to be told through movement, action, visuals. I was told when I first started writing animation, I was told by a veterans who said, if I see a script page and there's more than 3 lines of dialogue before I see an action line, it's already wrong. I don't even have to read anymore. Because two animated characters going blah, 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 it isn't like an episode of Friends. It's not going to work. And so there are exceptions to those rules, of course, but mostly that's true. You want to tell the story through action as much as possible. And even if there isn't something terribly exciting happening on screen, find something in that scene that's visual. I always ask myself, when I'm writing live action, I try to ask myself, what are the actors doing? I don't necessarily have to write it in, but I need to have some idea of what are they doing? Well, just standing there talking? What are they doing? And in animation, I'm saying, what are they drawing? What is my animator drawing? Because my script is going to go to a board artist, the episode director, the supervising director, and then all the technicians involved in all those different decisions. Remember, in an animated script, everything has to be decided. There is no set, right? So what color is the wall going to be? What kind of lamp are there going to be? Is there going to be a lamp? They have to draw everything. So I have to think visually, what are they drawing? What are we seeing? The animator's not just going to have them stand there. He's going to have something going on. It's better that I think of it than just some guy who I probably will never meet is going to have to make it up. Even if they don't use my suggestion, it gives them an idea of what might be happening visually. My screenwriting training has been enormously helpful in animation because I have to write visually. Yes, I wrote a lot of sitcoms, which were much more of a dialogue-heavy medium, but being able to write visually is enormously helpful in animation.
Can you give us a little more on the process of writing an animated screenplay?
Well, usually you're writing a television show. If that's a very different process than doing it for a feature company. The animated movies I've written are really more TV movies, so with Paw Patrol and things like that I've written that were They call them movies anyway. Those are really more like an hour. So those those scripts were probably, yeah, between probably 60 pages. But the process in animation as a general rule is much slower because they don't have the pressure of usually the pressure we're trying to fit an actor's schedule or something like that. They can afford to slow things down and take their time, and that can be good, but it also can be annoying because it takes forever to get something through the pipeline. So it takes a long time. A lot of executives are going to weigh in. In a perfect world, you know the director and you can talk things through with the director. Sometimes that's not the case. So in animated features, the things that people think about, they think about Pixar movies and that sort of thing. That's a different animal because Pixar and even Disney feature animation, which is separate from Pixar, they are isolated and separate from the rest of the company. I'm not allowed to even pitch to Disney Animation or Pixar. And in fact, they don't even take pitches. They develop almost everything in-house. They have writers on staff who develop work with the directors, the animation directors, and they develop their projects in-house most of the time. They don't take pitches from outsiders. Even outsiders like me who work for Disney, they don't take pitches. So that's a world I have not been allowed into. I will tell you an interesting historical story, though, if you like, which is when in 1988 there was a major writer's strike, and my then partner and I got a call from our agent saying, would you like to write a Disney animated feature? And I said, but there's a writer's strike. And they explained, well, no, animation is covered under a separate contract, which is the Animation Guild, which I am also a member of now. I wasn't then. So it had nothing to do with the Writers Guild, so you're allowed to do it. But I said, but there are no Disney animated features. And well, they're starting them up. Okay, well, we went and had a meeting with a guy at Disney Feature Animation, which was a very tiny operation in those days. And the guy explained to us, we're going to release this movie called The Little Mermaid really soon. And we think it's going to be a hit. And we have another movie coming up after it in the pipeline called Beauty and the Beast. And the third one we want to be something called The Lion King, but we don't have a story for The Lion King. Could you go off and think of a story? Obviously, we weren't the only writers they had approached. We said, sure, okay, we got nothing else to do, there's a strike on. So we went off and we came up with a story for The Lion King, but it had nothing to do with the story they wound up using. It was a very cute story, but a very different story. And he said, well, thank you very much, but we're not going to use that. Okay, and as we were walking out, he said, but if you have anything else, let us know. And I said, well, we were kicking around an idea called Pygmalion with a pig. And it was a story of a little pig who was, all the barnyard animals were afraid the little pig was going to get slaughtered like the other pigs do. So they try to think of a way to save him. And they convinced the stuffy English bulldog who lives in the farmhouse, can you convince the pig, can you teach the pig how to be a dog? And then he'll be spared, because nobody slaughters dogs. So, okay, so the English bulldog takes him on, and it was very funny. It was My Fair Lady with a pig and a dog. And the guys bought it in the room just like that. And I said, wow, this is great, this is easy. And then they went to make a deal, and we couldn't make a deal because what they were offering was so little money that we couldn't justifiably take it. So we sold them the idea outright for like $10,000 or something, and they still own it somewhere. Disney still owns Pygmalion if they ever want to make it. But since those days, feature animation has changed a lot. Obviously, Toy Story was the thing that changed it. Pixar changed it because now they realized how enormously successful they could be. Animation has a lot of things going for it. It's evergreen. You can show it to generation after generation after generation. They don't even know it's old. My grandchildren watch Toy Story. They don't know. It could have been made last year for all they know. And you can sell it to other countries easily because you don't even have to subtitle it. You just change the mouth flap a little bit, and suddenly it's Chinese. So there's a lot of reasons why they do feature animation or animation in general. The downside of it is it's much more expensive than to shoot live action, and it takes forever to do. The steps required to finish an animated feature take forever. So something that's commissioned now, a script that's commissioned now, and if it's a feature, it probably won't see the light of day for 8 years. And the material I write for television, it doesn't, I would probably, from the time I conceive an idea for an episode to the time it's on the air, is probably 2 years. So it takes forever.
You said things have changed drastically from when you were pitching back at the last writer's strike in the 80s. What advice would you have for someone today wanting to get into animation and the screenwriting side?
To get into animation screenwriting is a tough thing to do because it's all generated in-house. They're not going to read, they're not in the business of reading animated spec scripts. That's not going to do you any good. There's probably nobody at Pixar. There's nobody at most of the feature animation departments who's even bothering to do that. What I would advise anybody interested in animation to do, if you're a writer and you're not an animator, is to hook up with an animator. There's as many young, talented, out-of-work animators as there are writers. And so I would find one to hook up with and to make your own animated shorts. The beauty part of animation is anybody can do it. And unless you're, if production values don't have to be sky high, you can do it fairly inexpensively depending on the programs you're using. And to make some animated shorts, things that you can put on YouTube, things that you can put in festivals, things you can get some attention. And if you get the attention of someone at Pixar, or the attention of someone at Disney, or Nickelodeon, or wherever, that's probably the best way in. It's not like a traditional screenplay, though, in the sense of a live action screenplay. There are lots of producers who would like to read it. That's not really often the case in animation. There probably are some, but it's not as many as there are in live action. So wouldn't approach it the same way. Were I interested in that specifically, I think I would be going down the road of finding something I could write and produce myself or with a partner. And that would probably be the best way in.